Okay, I have scanned and adjusted my images. I'm in aperture, and what we're looking at here is the adjusted images. Um, in aperture, you can stack images, and I've got the original scans stacked underneath my adjusted images. So I thought I would just kind of talk about some of my results. Not all of these shots were shot um, on the day where I shot my outdoor vid on what I was doing and what the camera was and the light meter and all that good stuff. So the ones that were shot that day, which was yesterday, are these right here, right along here. So I'm going to talk a little bit about all of them though, just so you kind of see what it is I was up to. I think I mentioned that I was shooting Fuji Acros 100 and I was shooting it at 50, so I was overexposing by one stop. One thing I wanted to show off with this is this photo here. Let me focus on this guy. So this shot has pretty extreme light and darks in it. And the technique that I used, as I explained, I overexpose and underdevelop by a stop when it's contrasty conditions, and that's what this was. What that does is because you're overexposing, you're getting plenty of details in the shadows. And when you underdevelop, what you're doing is preventing overexposure in the highlights, over development. So you're cutting back development, which is what contributes to your highlights. If you hold that back, your highlights won't be as bright. So when you overexpose, you pull up shadows, you underdevelop, you push down your highlights, you've essentially compressed your dynamic range so you can get more information onto the negative. Nothing that special about this shot. I don't love it. I just wanted to point out that it's, if I try to show highlights and basically if I try to show clipping, and you can barely see it here. I don't even know if you'll be able to see it on video. These little blue dots, those are clipped blacks. So you can see that none of the blacks in this photo are absolutely clipped. Likewise, red would be shown for any blown highlight, and you don't see any of that. So that just kind of demonstrates, it doesn't always work out like this, it just kind of demonstrates the strength of that technique, at least when you're shooting in very contrasty conditions. Let's move on to some other photos. I'll show this one just very quickly. This one, I manipulated quite a bit, and the reason for that is I got some pretty bad fogging here. Some of it's haze, some of it I believe is fogging. You see this area here that's exposed properly? Let me turn this highlight, this clipping stuff off. See over here it's kind of exposed properly. I suspect that I have a light leak on this back and that some of the light got in through the leak. And then some of it is actual flare. You see this pentagonal piece of flare here and another one here. The sun I was trying to block off with a branch up here and apparently didn't succeed. Anyway, I kind of like torture testing lenses sometimes to see what I can get away with, and I didn't get away with much on this one. I was going for this cool symmetry, but the shot's kind of blown due to the flare. This shot I'm really happy with. This is an old Thunderbird. I should have said that the shots we're looking at right now are shot with a 50 millimeter f2.8 f lens. This lens weighs about as much as two of any other lenses that I have. It's huge and very heavy, but it's fun to shoot. It's nice to have the faster speed. I'm not sure whether it's nice enough for the weight penalty. It's much, much bigger than my floating lens element 50 millimeter CFI, which is not as fast, but much, much lighter. Anyway, happy with this shot. It has the look that I go for generally. And you can you can see the tones that I got out of the Acros, and after my manipulations. I feel like you can't take photos right off the scanner. That's my opinion. Either that or you're a great scanner operator and scanner software operator if you get your stuff right off the scanner ready to rock. I definitely don't. I spend quite a bit of time on each image, and you can see that in one of my other videos, what my workflow is. I've made small changes to it over time, but um, in general, I get the thing scanned. These days, I'm scanning actually in color, even if it's black and white negative. It seems to be improving the dynamic range coming off the scanner. Then I bring it into Silver Effects, which does a monochrome conversion to flatten it down to monochrome. I do some adjustments in there if necessary. It's usually contrast and a little bit of what they call structure. And then I take it over to Nik Sharpener Pro, Output Sharpener Pro, and touch it up there. I try to be pretty cool in my sharpening and not go too crazy. So this has been through that whole treatment. Same deal. This one I did go a little crazier with sharpening and structure. I was trying to hyperfocal this thing, meaning that I was trying to get everything in focus. So I failed. This is out of focus, and some of these details aren't as well focused as they could be. So I tried to bring them back out with the structure sliders in Silver Effects and with a little more aggressive sharpening. Another shot, same car, just another composition. Okay, I'm pretty happy with this photo. The negative isn't the greatest. You can see that I've got a little bit of an issue that pops up a lot in my negatives, and I'm not sure what it is. Some people have suggested old fixer, but I got this effect even with some really fresh fixer back when I did have some fresh fixer. So the negative's not very clean, but the negative looked good hanging in the shower. But I've got this streaking here and these little bubbles, whatever they are. So it needs to be cleaned up some. This is good enough for government work. So I'm kind of proud of this shot because I didn't really plan it. I was going to take a shot of this taco house. I've photographed it before. I just like the 60s kind of look of it. What happened is I was getting ready to frame it up, and then I saw this guy walking along here, and so this is very much a very quick snapshot, and that's hard to do with the Hasselblad. So pretty much nailed it. I wanted to get this guy over here. I just like this composition. I like the in painting. I don't never see it. I never hear it mentioned in photography, but this counter change. That's the idea of dark against light and light against dark. And so the only thing I could have done better maybe is get the guy over here. But this was very much a reaction shot. So I'm pretty happy with it as it stands. Not very happy with this shot. This is not edited. So this is the one right off the scanner. You can see how soft this is. My scanner is not the sharpest scanner out there. So that's one reason I do a bit of post-processing. So anyway, I wasn't super happy with this shot. This one I did edit. I'm not super happy with it. I've shot this bicycle any number of times. The composition's a little bit central, maybe. I was trying to balance, kind of knock it off balance touch with where the mannequin is in the background, but no such luck. This is another case. Let me try to turn on clipping. So there is some clipping in the blacks here, but check this out, guys. This is one stop overexposed with ultra bright sunlight, direct sunlight, and the whites are not overexposed. There's no clipping in the whites. So my scanner was able to scan this. Oh, there's a little touch here. I take it back. Just look at that. But that's a spectral highlight, so that's okay, or a specular highlight. That's perfectly fine. That's the way it should be. So I think this helps to demonstrate that this technique that I was using helps to hold, kind of compress your dynamic range. So that's one nice thing about film. This is a gal who was with her boyfriend, husband, friend, whatever, and this is one of my 100 Strangers shots. She was nice enough to let me take a portrait of her. Again, harsh light. Let me, now this, I take the blame on this. This was a little bit underexposed. And so I had to bring it up, and that ended up blowing out the highlights. Um, you'll recall I set my I kind of did a test meter and went for EV14, and I just left the camera on that. If I was in sunlight, I just left it on that. I didn't worry about it. So you can adjust stuff in post. But anyway, because um, there was different light here than where I measured, the shot was a bit underexposed, and I pulled it up in post, and that caused some of these areas to blow a bit. I thought this was a cool shot. Turns out not so cool. I was kind of liking this pattern down here. Didn't do the greatest job capturing it, or so this is like right off the scanner. Maybe not quite right off the scanner. I probably adjusted. Oops. If you see those sliders down there, that means I adjusted something in aperture. Probably contrast. Just a selfie. I couldn't use my 14 EV measurement here because I wasn't in the light that I measured earlier. So what I did was I switched my meter over. I wish I had thought to videotape this. Switched my meter over to reflective and pointed it down at the sidewalk, which is about 18% gray, and used that as my meter value. And it came out metered pretty well. I did some adjustments to it, but it came out fine. Okay, here's another example of not blowing highlights. The shadows are blown a bit here, so I'm not sure about that. It's probably because I pumped up contrast. I did a bit to this photo in Nick Silver Effects, and I could live with those deep shadows being blacked out. That's just fine because I was trying to get additional contrast into the image. But anyway, as you can see here, this is a really high key photo, and there's no blown whites, and this was overexposed by one stop. And if you want to get into what kind of details medium format captures, you can see a lot of nice details here. It would be even better, much better, if I had a real scanner. So I guess maybe I shouldn't be trying to show this off. But the tones are nice. I would probably print this. I kind of like this kind of scene. So gives you an idea of what I got on that little trip with my 201F, shooting the first the 50 on a different day, and then the 110 millimeter f2 on this day. So there you have it. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more. Talk to you later.